Hi there guys, it's Aaron here from Mirror Gaming. I just got to go hands-on with Star Wars Outlaws for the first time, but I better get out of here before these guys get angry with me. Whew, that was a close one. Okay, I finally managed to dodge the stormtroopers. I could give you my thoughts about Star Wars Outlaws. This is obviously the big game from Ubisoft, their first time tackling an open world Star Wars game. I got to play for around about an hour, 3 missions, 20 minutes apiece, and I'm gonna tell you about them now. So the first mission I got to play was called The Wreck, and this is where we met Kay as she had to dive into an abandoned shipwreck, unsurprisingly, to try and source a nav computer for a client, shall we say. But overall, it was really good. It was very linear and not the kind of cut and dry sort of, assassination mission you'd expect, kind of by the numbers, go in and out. There was a lot of depth to the mission design, I'd say. So again, this is a third-person shooter primarily, set in an open world, but The Wreck was the kind of mission that really reminded me something more along the lines of an Uncharted, but only set in the Star Wars universe. And that literally goes down for what Kay, the scoundrel and protagonist of the game, is able to achieve. So she's equipped with a grapple hook and she's able to swing, jump and climb, very similar to Nathan Drake, although she has the obviously help of an alien companion by her side in Nix. And I was a little bit disappointed initially to see that Nix kind of acts as your eagle vision for this game. So at any point you can hold up on the D-pad and he will kind of look around and be able to source out where all the important items of interest are, as well as any important enemies around you. But once we were out of that, this was a very exploratory mission. It involved crouching around, a lot of exploration, discovery, and Kay herself is equipped with multiple tools that can help her, including a handy little hairpin in her hair which she can pull out anytime in order to slice computers, where I was able to engage with 1 or 2 mini games. One involved hacking by listening to the specific rhythm of the beeps and tapping the R2 button along with it to hack in. That was a very cool mechanic, as well as a sort of more expected pick the 3 symbols, line them up, and that's the way you get in and stuff. As well as the sort of eagle vision detective mode, which obviously is popular in most AAA open world games now. You knew that Star Wars Outlaws was going to have one. You can also command Nix at will, and sometimes that might mean distracting enemies, whereby you hold down on the left trigger, or the left bumper, sorry, and then you can kind of sort of show him where to go in order to distract an enemy. Or if you feel like going loud, you can kind of start off the situation by, sicking them directly on enemies, in which he'll attack them, allowing you to get the jump with your trusty blaster. Speaking of which, enemies in this game, stormtroopers and fellow scoundrels, they can take a hit. They're no slouch, but luckily Kay is always equipped with her trusty blaster, and as well as your traditional firing mode. At any time you can switch to what I believe is called an ion blast, and for any enemies with shields, so sometimes stormtroopers equipped with a heavy repeater, they'll blast away at you and you won't be able to get a lock on them. In order to do that, just simply tap the Y button, you will switch to your alt fire capability, and then just shred that onto the shielded enemy. It will bring the shield down, switch back to the blaster, and Bob's your uncle. Perform enough kills, and this being a Ubisoft game based around shooting, you knew there was going to be a form of Splinter Cell's mark and execute, and that's exactly what Kay's special ability is. So once you get enough kills, you'll build up a meter, and a little icon in the bottom right will showcase that it's time for you to mark and execute, at which point time pauses. You're able to tag, I believe it was up to 3 enemies in my demo, and then you just let Kay rip. Wreck mission ended with a massive chase sequence. I was able to obviously steal the nav computer from my client, and it was at this point where I think it was a fellow bounty hunter sort of caught me as Kay in the act, and then the whole place started to blow up instantaneously, and this is where the Uncharted inspiration I feel like comes in again. It felt like a really action set piece moment where you are dodging exploding buildings, you're firing at enemies up on the shelf, and it all culminated with the whole thing collapsing behind me before I come out of the centrifuge, and all of a sudden Kay's speeder is waiting for me, at which point the chase continued and I hopped on the speeder, and then we were very escaping. So yeah, Star Wars Outlaws, it doesn't seem to be short on spectacle or thrills, at least for the more linear guided missions. If you've seen any of the Star Wars Outlaws, the promotional imagery, you would have seen it's Kay, it's Nix, but there's also like a reformed battle droid, who I believe is also a bounty hunter, called ND5, and it was at the end of the first mission, The Wreck, which seemed to be their first meeting together before they're part of the assembled crew, and he is one hell of a badass, I'll say. He gets stuff done. The second mission I got to try was called The Relic. It takes place on a new planet called Kiminji, I believe, which is centered around ice. So again, this was Ubisoft's way of showcasing, you know, we've got deserts in Tatooine, we've got space battles, more on that later. But in terms of biome variety and planet variety, Kimji was really good, particularly because it started off in a market section where me as Kay, again, we were going in for another job, retrieving an item. We're infiltrating this planet now. And this was really, The Relic, the second mission, was really the showcase of you can either go stealthily or you can go loud. And obviously stealthily, I'd say it plays similar to other third-person open world games, maybe even an Assassin's Creed, whereby in a crouched position, providing the enemy doesn't see you, you can go up and sneak up behind, you know, scoundrels as Kay, take them out. But equally, you can sit next, distract somebody over there, or you can stun them. So the Ion Blast also doubles up as a stun, at which point, you know, you have a temporary window of time where you can shoot that to an enemy, they'll remain stunned, and you can kind of rush up to them, take them out using a melee attack before they alert their friends, or indeed trigger an alarm. So it was here where I was facing off, like, you know, many stormtroopers. I got to pick up a heavy repeater myself and really benefit from that shield. And then, yeah, it was really good. We had to, it's called The Relic because Kay was in there to retrieve a stolen relic. And but the cool part about this mission was that even though I could go loud, I could see the instances where stealth would be applicable, and that included like hacking doors to gain a vantage point on people. Kay is equipped with a grapple hook, and there are certain points within these multi-tiered levels that you can use a grapple to kind of shift yourself up. You know, she's not climbing on the walls, but there's a fair degree of mobility there, even within the more linearly designed missions. The third mission I got to play was called False Flag, and this really started on an Imperial ship. So obviously a very cold-looking location. You're set on a ship, and the goal here was literally just to break out. At which point I got to board Kay's ship, the Trailblazer, and that is when I got into the Star Wars Outlaws' iteration of ship combat. And it's certainly a game where you can fly a ship and shoot at things. I'm not necessarily saying that the Trailblazer combat was bad, but you know, it's to be as expected. The more impressive feature was the fact that you can go ground to air, air to ground without hitting a load screen once. In terms of achieving that authentic Star Wars fantasy, it really did do a lot to sell me on how seamless, you know, it could be. Once we'd broken out from the Imperial ship, I don't know what class it was, so do forgive me, aboard the Trailblazer ship, it was a simple case of fending off TIE fighters, locking in using what's called, I believe, pursuit mode, which essentially is ADS once you're in a ship. And then I felt that it was very forgivable. You know, once you engage pursuit mode and manage to lock onto a target, you could just fire away with your missiles or your standard blaster, and the targeting would kind of stay with the enemy, whichever one you had locked. There's also a boost, which was mapped to the X button, and it was pretty sort of generous. I think technically there's 3 boosts, but I could hold down on it for a pretty long time, and it was fun. So yeah, those were the 3 missions I got to play of Star Wars Outlaws. I'd say that the capability is there for Star Wars Outlaws to be a really fun, really enjoyable third-person open world Star Wars game, especially when we get into, you know, more familiar sections like Tatooine, and who's to say what other characters might pop up. I would say this is the Uncharted sort of Star Wars experience many of us have been craving. If there's one thing that I am still curious about now, it is the kind of like open world structure of the game. We don't know yet how big these planets are, how many planets there will be, but I'd say if there's 4 or 5 of a decent size combined with the more linear missions that I got to play today, it's going to be a fun time for a Star Wars fan. But anyway guys, do you plan on picking up Star Wars Outlaws? Be sure to leave this video a like and consider subscribing to the Mirror Gaming YouTube channel to stay up to date with even more videos like this. And obviously stay tuned for the rest of this week, where we'll be posting up even more Summer Game Fest coverage. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. May the Force be with you.